Give your room to your brother or leave tonight.
Fine, I'll leave.
3 days later, I owned a hillside home, and she was begging me to return.
My stepmother pointed at me across the dinner table and shouted, "Give your room to your brother, or leave tonight." She expected me to beg. Instead, I packed one suitcase, drove away, and bought a hillside home. 3 days later, she discovered that forcing me out had cost her almost everything. Hello, my name is Flane Hennett. I am 32 years old, and for most of my life, I believed keeping the peace was the same as being loved. I was wrong. The night my stepmother threw me out began with roast chicken, cold mashed potatoes, and a silence so tense that even the old clock in the dining room sounded nervous. My father sat at the head of the table, cutting his food into tiny pieces without eating. Across from me sat my stepmother, Vanessa, wearing the tight smile she used whenever she had already made a decision for someone else. Beside her was her 26-year-old son, Ryan. Ryan had arrived that afternoon with 2 suitcases, a gaming computer, and no job. Again, "We need to discuss the bedroom situation," Vanessa said. I set down my fork. I knew exactly what she meant. The house had 4 bedrooms. My father and Vanessa used the largest one. Vanessa had turned one room into a dressing room and another into a home office, even though she did not work from home. The last bedroom had been mine since I was 9 years old. I did not live there full-time anymore. I had an apartment near my job in Denver. But I spent several nights each week at the family house, because my father had undergone heart surgery 6 months earlier. I drove him to appointments, organized his medication, cooked meals, and handled the bills whenever he became tired. My room was not simply a place to sleep. It held the last things my mother had given me before she died: a cedar jewelry box, a quilt she had sewn by hand, several letters, and a framed photograph of us standing beside a lake. Ryan leaned back in his chair. "I can't stay on the couch. It's killing my back." "Then use the office," I said calmly. Vanessa's smile disappeared. "That room is not available." "Neither is mine." My father finally looked up. "Claire, maybe just for a few weeks." Last time Ryan stayed for a few weeks. He remained for 11 months. Ryan rolled his eyes. "You hardly live here." "I live here whenever Dad needs help. He has me now." Vanessa snapped. That was almost funny. During the previous 6 months, she had missed 2 cardiology appointments because of salon visits. Ryan had visited his grandfather in Florida, gone to Las Vegas, and spent several weeks finding himself in California. Neither of them had ever filled my father's pill organizer. I looked at Dad, expecting him to say something. He stared at his plate. Vanessa pushed her chair back so hard that it struck the wall. "I am tired of your attitude," she shouted. "Give your room to your brother or leave." The whole room became still. Ryan smirked. Vanessa folded her arms, waiting for an argument. She wanted tears, bargaining, and another chance to remind everyone that she was now the woman of the house. But something inside me became strangely quiet. I turned to my father. "Is that what you want?" He opened his mouth, but Vanessa answered for him. "This is our house." I kept looking at Dad. He lowered his eyes again. That was my answer. "All right," I said. "I'll leave." Vanessa blinked. "Tonight? You said give up the room or leave." "I choose to leave." I walked upstairs while she was still trying to understand why I had not fought back. I packed my mother's quilt, her letters, the cedar box, clothing, important documents, and the old photograph. I left the furniture behind. Most of it had belonged to the house long before Vanessa arrived. While I packed, Ryan stood in the doorway. "You're being dramatic," he said. "No, I'm following instructions. Mom didn't mean forever." Then she should not have said it. He watched me close my suitcase. "Where are you going?" "Somewhere I am welcome." Downstairs, my father waited near the front door. For one hopeful second, I thought he would stop me. Instead, he whispered, "Call me when you get to your apartment." I nodded, carried my bags to my car, and drove away. I did not cry until I reached the end of the street. The tears were not only about the room. They were about every Christmas when I had smiled through Vanessa, changing our traditions. Every birthday dinner interrupted by one of Ryan's emergencies. Every time my father had said, "Just let it go, Claire," because asking me to surrender was easier than asking Vanessa to behave. When I reached my apartment, I did not unpack. Instead, I opened my laptop and checked an email I had received 2 days earlier from a real estate attorney named Daniel Morris. That email was the first secret Vanessa did not know. My maternal grandmother, Evelyn, had died the previous winter. She had lived modestly and rarely discussed money. I knew she owned a few rental properties, but I did not know she had sold them years earlier and invested the proceeds. Her estate had finally cleared probate. After taxes and charitable gifts, she had left me a little over $1.8 million. The money had reached my account that morning. I had planned to tell my father during dinner. I had even planned to offer to pay off the remaining mortgage on his house. Then Vanessa gave me a choice. Without knowing it, she had saved me from making the most expensive mistake of my life. The following morning, I called a real estate agent named Monica, who had once helped one of my clients relocate. "I need a house," I told her. "How soon?" "As soon as possible." She laughed, but I did not. By noon, we were driving through the foothills west of Denver. The third property stood on a quiet hillside above a line of pine trees. It was not a mansion, but it was beautiful 3 bedrooms, wide windows, a stone fireplace, and a wooden deck overlooking the valley. Sunlight filled every room. In the upstairs bedroom, I could see mountains in the distance. For the first time in years, I imagined waking up without listening for someone else's anger. "This one," I said. Monica looked surprised. "You don't want to see the others?" "No. This feels like home." The seller had already moved out and wanted a fast closing. I made a strong cash offer, and because my financing was not an issue, we arranged an accelerated closing through the title company. The process was not magical, and it was not reckless. My attorney reviewed every document. An inspector checked the roof, foundation, plumbing, and electrical system. By the end of the second day, all major issues had been cleared. The formal transfer was scheduled, and I received permission to begin moving in under a temporary occupancy agreement. On the third morning after dinner, I stood on my new deck with a cup of coffee. Below me, morning mist rested between the trees. My mother's quilt lay across the bed inside. Her photograph stood on the fireplace mantel. For the first time, everything around me belonged to a life no one could take away with a shouted command. Then my phone began ringing. The first call came from Vanessa. I let it go to voicemail. The second came from Ryan. The third came from my father. I answered. "Claire," Dad said. His breathing sounded uneven. "Where are you?" "At my new house." There was a long pause. "Your what?" "My new house." "You bought a house in 3 days." I had the money. Another pause followed. Then I heard Vanessa shouting in the background. "Ask her about the bank." My stomach tightened. "What happened?" Dad's voice dropped. "The mortgage payment failed." That made no sense. I had arranged automatic payments from the household account for years. There should have been enough money. "Did someone remove funds from the account?" I asked. Silence. Then Dad said, "Vanessa transferred some money to Ryan." "How much?" $48,000. I stepped away from the railing. That was the second secret. The money in that account did not belong entirely to my father and Vanessa. After my mother died, her life insurance had been used as the down payment on the house. My father had later added me to the title and financial accounts because part of the property was legally connected to my mother's estate. For years, I had deposited money into the household account to cover repairs, taxes, utilities, and medical expenses. Vanessa apparently believed those deposits were gifts she could use however she wished. "What did Ryan need $48,000 for?" I asked. Ryan took the phone. "It was a business investment." "What business?" "A sports bar franchise." "They don't own a sports bar." "The deal fell through." "Then where is the money?" He hesitated. That hesitation told me more than an answer. "Ryan, where is it?" "Some of it covered expenses." "Which expenses?" Vanessa grabbed the phone. "This is a family matter." "It became my matter when you used an account with my name on it. After everything we've done for you, you are worried about money." I almost admired the confidence of that question. "You told me to leave," I said. I was angry. "You said the house belonged to you and Dad, so handle it as its owners. Claire, don't be childish. Come home and fix this." "No," so she became quiet. It was probably the first time I had ever given her that answer without explaining myself. "What do you mean no?" "I mean, I will not transfer money. I will not cover the mortgage. I will not repair the consequences of a decision you made behind my father's back." I ended the call. My hands were shaking, but my voice had not. An hour later, I contacted Daniel, the estate attorney, and explained everything. He referred me to a property lawyer and a forensic accountant. By afternoon, the accountant had found more. For almost 2 years, Vanessa had been moving small amounts from the household account into a separate account under her name. Most transfers were between $800 and $2,000, small enough that my father had not noticed. Together, they totaled more than $31,000. There were also payments to luxury stores, a vacation rental, Ryan's credit cards, and a company called Summit Venture Consulting. Summit Venture Consulting was registered to Ryan. It had no office, no employees, and no visible business activity. The sports bar investment had not failed. It had never existed. The money had paid off Ryan's gambling debt and financed a car he had hidden in a storage garage. I felt anger, but beneath it was something colder. Vanessa had not thrown me out because Ryan needed a bed. She wanted my room because it contained a locked filing cabinet where I kept copies of the household financial records. When I packed, I had taken the important documents, but left the empty cabinet behind. She had assumed the records were still inside. The bedroom demand had been a desperate attempt to reach them before I discovered the missing money. That evening, my father called again. This time he was crying. "I didn't know," he said. "Claire, I swear I didn't know." I believed him. But believing him did not erase his silence at the dinner table. "You did know she treated me badly," I said. "I thought I could keep everyone together." "You kept everyone together by asking me to accept whatever she did." He had no answer. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I love you, Dad. But I am not coming back to that house." What am I supposed to do? Tell the truth. Start there. The next day, my lawyer sent formal notice to the bank and to everyone connected to the household account. No further withdrawals could be made without review. We also filed a civil claim demanding the return of the money transferred to Ryan and Vanessa. That was when chaos truly began. Vanessa called 18 times. Her messages moved through every emotion. First she was furious. Then she was offended. Then she claimed I had misunderstood. Finally, she said she had always loved me like a daughter. I saved every message. Ryan sent one text: "If Dad loses the house, it's your fault." I replied, "The house is not being lost. The missing money is being investigated." He did not answer. 2 days later, the bank's fraud department contacted us. Because my name was on the account and some transfers had been falsely labeled as household repairs, the bank required supporting invoices. Vanessa could not provide them. Ryan's company had submitted 3 fake invoices. One claimed to have repaired the roof, though the actual roof company had done that work the year before. Another charged for replacing the heating system, which had never been replaced. The third listed a bathroom renovation that did not exist. My lawyer advised me not to confront them directly, so I waited. Waiting was harder than shouting. Every part of me wanted to drive back, place the documents on the dining table, and demand an explanation. But for once, I let facts speak louder than anger. The following week, my father asked Vanessa to leave the house while the investigation continued. She refused. Then she made her final mistake. She tried to sell several pieces of furniture online, including an antique desk that had belonged to my mother. My father saw 2 strangers carrying it toward a truck and called me. I had the original estate inventory showing the desk belonged to me. The police stopped the sale. No dramatic arrest happened that day, but an official report was created. That report became evidence of a pattern. Vanessa treated anything in the house as hers, no matter who legally owned it. My father finally hired his own attorney and filed for divorce. Vanessa's confidence disappeared almost overnight. She had expected Dad to choose silence as he always had. She had expected me to return, apologize, and rescue everyone. She had expected Ryan's lies to remain hidden. Instead, Dad froze their joint discretionary account. Ryan's car was seized under the civil claim. The fake invoices were turned over to investigators. Vanessa moved into a small apartment, and Ryan moved with her because he still had no income. Their relationship did not survive the pressure. Within a month, they were blaming each other. Vanessa claimed Ryan had lied about the business. Ryan claimed his mother had designed the transfers. Their written accusations gave the lawyers more evidence than we could have gathered ourselves. The final settlement came months later. Ryan returned the car, sold his gaming equipment, and agreed to a repayment plan. Vanessa surrendered her claim to several marital assets in exchange for resolving the civil case. My father kept the house, but he refinanced it in his name and took full responsibility for the payments. I did not pay a single dollar toward the settlement. That was my revenge. Not destroying them, not humiliating them, and not becoming cruel. My revenge was allowing consequences to reach the people I had protected from them for years. Dad began counseling. He also learned to manage his own appointments, medication, and bills. At first, he struggled. Then he improved. One Sunday afternoon, he visited my hillside home. He stood on the deck and looked across the valley. "It's beautiful," he said. "It is. I should have defended you that night." I did not rush to comfort him. "Yes," I said. "You should have." He nodded slowly. I kept telling myself that silence prevented conflict. But it only told Vanessa she could keep going. That was the apology I had needed, not an excuse, but the truth. I poured us coffee, and we sat outside beneath the open sky. Our relationship did not return to what it had been. In some ways, it became better because it was finally honest. I no longer played caretaker whenever he avoided responsibility. He no longer asked me to forgive behavior simply because confronting it made him uncomfortable. As for my old bedroom, Dad turned it into a small reading room. He kept my mother's antique chair by the window. The first time I saw it, I felt no desire to move back. That surprised me. For years, I thought that room held my connection to my mother. But her quilt was now on my bed. Her letters were safe in my study. Her photograph caught the morning light in my own living room. Home was never the room. Home was the right to live without being threatened, used, or pushed aside. Vanessa sent me one final message after the divorce was completed. She wrote, "I hope you're satisfied. You broke this family apart over a bedroom." I stared at the words for a long time. Then I replied, "No. The bedroom only opened the door. Your choices did the rest." After that, I blocked her number. On the first anniversary of the night I left, I invited a few close friends and my father to dinner at my hillside home. We ate on the deck under warm lights, while the valley slowly turned dark below us. No one shouted. No one demanded a sacrifice to prove my love. No one asked me to make myself smaller so another person could feel important. When everyone had gone, I remained outside with my mother's quilt around my shoulders. I thought about the suitcase in my car, my father's silence, and Vanessa standing at the dining table, as if she controlled my future. She believed she had forced me out of my home. In truth, she had forced me toward the life I was too loyal, and too afraid, to choose for myself. That night taught me something I will never forget. When someone tells you to surrender your place or walk away, do not always fight for the room. Sometimes the most powerful answer is to leave, close the door behind you, and build a home on higher ground.